Alright, so it's time to talk about an album that really deviates from my usual clientele. This is an album that really hit me hard about, well, over 10 years ago. I found this album actually through a review from the Toronto Star way back in like 2006. I had just finished high school, going into university, and I gotta tell you, it was a little bit of a dark time for me. So this album was one of those albums that saved me. And I decided I need to pay some dues to it because even though it's not my usual MO of music, it does show a different facet of me. So let's dive into this very important album for me. War of the Wakening Phantoms by the High Dials. So the High Dials are a Montreal-based Canadian rock band from the starting off in the early 2000s. They started off as like that rock band from like the 60s mod. What I really like is that psychedelic aspect of it with a little bit of depth within their writing style, and it's that blending of a little bit of an experimental thing. Like at this point within the music scene, they would also kind of be helmed as being kind of indie, especially like Canadian indie. Like I got Arcade Fire there behind me for a reason. There's this breath of celebration within it. A lot of these songs are set in the major chord. They're very happy. They're very excitable. But where I felt with like Arcade Fire and other indie bands, there was still that, but there was a little bit of cynicism in there as well. I do feel, and I want to get this out of the way right off the bat, I do feel like this album is a little bit too long. Like there are 14 songs on this album, and I don't feel like every single song is really needed on here. But it's funny, even after saying that and listening to the album a couple more times, it's really hard to kind of say, well, what would I cut from this album, even if it is so long? Because each song really has its own unique identity. Each song has its own different thing going on it. Like some songs have this really quirky thing. Maybe that's why I have a hard time kind of saying this album is too long. True, but I also don't know what I would cut out of it as well. And what I really also enjoy is like the harmonizations that are found on this album. Like this was something that I found very absent of a lot of music scenes probably since the 80s, is we don't have a whole lot of harmonizations within the vocal work. We just have like the main vocalist, and that's it. Like I can't really think of too many bands that have more than one prominent vocalist. So let me talk about those standout tracks, like the ones that really hit me hard. The first is Winter Ghosts. And Winter Ghosts feels very much like it was a Genesis EP, I believe, of Twilight Elder House. It has that same kind of energy and that same kind of ebb and flow within that. And when I vividly remember listening to this album the first time I got it, I had parked in a Zehrs parking lot on like Cundles and St. Vincent Street in Barrie, Ontario, if any of you guys know what that means, and listening to this album. And Winter Ghosts, when it came on, I believe it's the 4th or 5th track. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 5th track. So once it came on, these are the tracks that came up before. I really dug, I really liked, but once I got onto Winter Ghosts, I kept repeating it. Like, I wouldn't let it go. It was like I had a prize fish in my hand. I'm like, nope, you're not going away. Like, I'm not going into the next one, which is Stick With The Old Fire. And I also love how simple this song is. Like, it feels very intimate. We just have that guitar work. We've got that polyphonic, psychedelic side of the band really flushes out, and that's what I really enjoyed, especially within that chorus. And I think that's why Twilight Elder House really comes to mind when I listen to this track. The other song that I really like is Your Eyes Are a Door, and this obviously, if you know me, doesn't come as a surprise because it's like 8.5 minutes. It's a little bit longer, and I just love that play out. That second half where they really start to explore that territory. This is what I was hoping more music was going to do within the future back in 2005. It was stretching, it was looking through, and it was really floating, taking those really psychedelic aspects. And I love how this song really hunkers down and commits to that. Like, they don't half-ass it. And the last track, this was easily one of my favorite songs of all time, is The Lost Explorer. And before I talk about Lost Explorer, Master of the Clouds precedes this album, and I love where this song kind of blends into, because Master of the Clouds has this really strange guitar work. It doesn't feel all that right when you first hear it the first couple of times, but then it starts to make sense as the song goes on. And at the end of Master of the Clouds, it really starts to drift. You don't really know where it's going, and again, this is what I really liked from Your Eyes Are a Door. But within Master of the Clouds, you're not quite sure, well, where were they going within this particular piece? But then when they come into The Lost Explorer, it starts off right pretty much where you're found. And I like that idea of the end of Master of the Clouds being this wandering of like, I don't know where I am. Kind of like that Lost Explorer. And then once the song starts, that's when the Lost Explorer is kind of found within the music. This song, Lost Explorer, is one of the most important songs for me, because this song has saved me in a number of different ways. Everything that this song was telling me was exactly what I needed to hear. The lyrics were so potent and so heartfelt. I thought they were practically talking directly to me, even though they weren't. But like I really needed to hear this. And I just remember by the climax, where they say the main line, which is, if no one's coming, when will you save yourself? And they repeat that a number of times. And it's almost like that scene from Good Will Hunting, like where they repeat that line over and over again, this one.
It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault.
By the third or fourth repeat of that, I was just in tears. Like, I was ugly sobbing in the car while listening to this. It hit me so hard. Like, I don't think, looking back, I think the only other song that has hit me this hard was Firth the Fifth by Genesis. But that was a different kind of an impact. Like, that was much more of a rediscovering of something that I didn't really know. Whereas this was coming to an enlightenment of something I already knew. And really bringing it to fruition. Like, I felt like I was that Lost Explorer, and this just, it would not let me go. And I'm so glad that the band decided to follow this track up with the drum, which is just a very soft, very kind of come down after that. And I love the pairing of these three tracks. Master of the Clouds, Lost Explorer, and the drum, because the drum is just that very couple minstrels just sitting around having a good time. Like, yeah, we went through something really intense. Let's bring it back down before we conclude this. Because they still have like a good like 5 tracks to get through. So yeah, those 3 tracks, Winter Ghosts, Your Eyes Are a Door, and Lost Explorer, those 3 tracks are just so impactful for me. And then the rest of the songs are really friggin' good. Like, I don't really have enough time to go through each one and talk really in depth about each one. They're presenting some very heavy concepts, but not in a very dark way. Like, on the one hand, I want to give this the masterpiece treatment, and I might tag it as a masterpiece, but I do know that there are a few flaws about this. Not every single song hits, and as I said, this album is a little bit on the long side, even though I can't think of anything I'd want to cut. So at the end of the day, I still love this album with my whole heart. I return to this album time and time again. I mean, this album's been out now for, what, 13, 14 years, and it still feels as fresh now as when it was released. So it's definitely passed the test of time for me, and it will go down to be a classic for me personally. So yeah, that's about it. That's all I've got for The War of the Wakening Phantoms by the High Dials. Please go out and listen to it. It's on Spotify. I'll leave the link down below for you guys to check out, because this is one that I don't want you to miss. And that's about it. So what did you guys think? Did you love this album? Did you hate it? Have a listen to it and let me know of your own thoughts by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.